Coming up on this very special episode of 2.5 Geeks, Rage, autopsies, sandy bridges, contest, little hints, and more.
The bar has been set wicked fast.
It rocked in the benchmarks. We're going to up the ante a little bit.
Processing power, I kind of understand this. We're back. Hello. Welcome back to 2.5 Geeks. I'm Aya Zakhtar alongside Dave Altavilla and Marco Chiappetta. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic.
Just fantastic? Not stupendous?
Yep. It's just fantastic.
Just fantastic. That's fine. That's usually the way it goes because Marco's living the life because he gets to play with toys all the time. And I know you guys actually had the backstory, the tech behind id Tech 5 Rage. Okay, so it's Rage actually. So what's Rage-tastic about this?
Marco has Rage.
Well, I always have Rage. It's always in there. I keep it sacked away somewhere in the depths of my mind. But that's a story for another day. Rage is id's upcoming shooter / driving game / post-apocalyptic, craziness. It's been in development for 7 years, and if you're at all into gaming, John Carmack is a god amongst men. He's one of the supreme game coders out there for God knows how long. And the engine behind the upcoming game Rage is id Tech 5. So we put up an article. Our man Joel discussed some of the finer technical details of the engine and explained how it's going to affect gameplay, graphics, and what have you.
Now, you were telling me before that console games usually go for 30 frames a second, but this thing is going for 60 frames a second. Because this game's been in development so long, is there something out there right now that can handle 60 frames a second, especially this kind of game?
Yeah, I mean, all of the one of the main goals with the id Tech 5 engine was scalability. So it's been in development for a very long time, and Carmack and the folks at id have actually showed versions of the engine running on an iPhone and also on a multi-core uber powerful PCs. So it's not that what it is there's so many console ports now. PC gaming, it's still, in my opinion, the premier platform, but so many games are ported from consoles that the developers shoot for that 30 frames per second target for, the vast majority of TVs are going to show that properly. But with Rage is shooting for a 60 frames per second target, and they want super fast gameplay, super smooth frame rates. They want the action to be, really nonstop and immersive and fluid and quick. So they're shooting for that 60 frame per second target, and because the engine is so scalable, the goal is that a high-end PC is going to be able to show off all these, awesome graphical effects and hit that frame rate target and create a beautiful game.
Now, in learning the backstory about this game that's been in development for a long time, is there anything that stands out about this thing at this point, or is this something like, okay, it's been 7 years and it doesn't seem that special now?
So I think there's lots of subtle special things that are going to happen. If you've played all of the id games, Doom, Quake, you can go further back to Wolfenstein, a lot of the environments were dark, indoor, hallways kind of things. There's no denying id makes a great game, but that kind of stuff gets monotonous. Now, while Rage is a post-apocalyptic world and things are all in disarray, there's expansive outdoor environments. There's all different kind of indoor and outdoor environments. There's driving elements. There's cool futuristic weapons. They have awesome voiceover acting. John Goodman's actually one of the characters.
Yeah,
there's lots of stuff lining up in this game to make it a blockbuster hit. The only thing we don't know is how great the gameplay is and how well the story is told. But I have my fingers crossed. I think they're going to do it right.
Or maybe you could have played this game on the Alienware Aurora R3, and you guys at HotHardware have a headline and some actual text in here that I need to read out loud because it's brilliant. The headline is Alienware Aurora R3 system autopsy, calling back the alien autopsy scandal of the day. And then asking the question when you're picking a rig in the summer, do you play the part of Polly Prudence and pick up a modest machine that is good enough to surf the web and hammer out emails, or treat yourself to a decadent gaming PC because, well, you're worth a bit of extra coin? And then you guys talk about Alienware. This was written by Paul Lilly. This is interesting. Dave, can you tell us about the Aurora R3?
And damn it, I'm worth it. Yeah, that was good. That was good stuff by Paul. I have to hand it to him. And you know what? I want to take a quick step back on id and id Tech 5. And one of the things about Rage, real quick, before we move on. The other thing that id is bringing to the table with Rage is Carmack's or id's invention of mega textures, which is kind of cool. And what sort of sets apart in those massive outdoor environments, what sets apart id is this mega texture technology. Multi-texturing, terrain texturing that's traditionally done is based on a tile format of repetitive tiles to create, miles and miles of landscape. And after a while, you add some detail to it, but it just looks like more of the same repetitive, tile and structure and textures along the landscape. It has this technology called mega textures where they take one huge texture and render it and stream it from the PC sort of in real time. And it's technology and there's compression involved and, proprietary sort of stuff. But that's their special sauce. That's what makes the outdoor environments and all of the environments with this big terrain look so real and so lifelike because it doesn't repeat itself. So a little bit more fun stuff coming from id. And looking forward to that, to the Rage title. And then, yes, on to aliens that id likes to kill in their games. The Aurora R3 from Alienware, now division of Dell. The Aurora R3 is a system that Paul Lilly took a look at for us. And, standard issue, sort of mid-range gaming PC, mid-high end, I would say, gaming PC. Core i7-2600, 4 gig of DDR3, a pair of ATI Radeon HD 6950s, pair of mid-range cards, Seagate 2 terabyte, 7200 RPM hard drive, Blu-ray, Windows 7, the whole deal. Nice machine, definitely very capable. The nice thing, for Alienware is that, traditionally a boutique builder before Dell acquired them, very high-end, pricey systems, now a little bit more attainable, and we got a fully decked out system for $2,450 or thereabouts. So nice to see that price range coming from the Alienware folks in a big decked out system.
Now, unlike a lot of Alienware, this actual desktop's a little bit subdued in its design. It doesn't have like crazy fins or it has crazy lighting. I mean, it has a bit of lighting. What do you think of the styling? Is the styling going to bother gamers because the performance is so good at all? I mean, because I'm thinking if you want to play a game, you don't really care about the case. But then again, I've seen some crazy cases.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the system could be configured significantly higher end if you wanted to drop a hard drive in versus that 2 terabyte. SSD, if you want to drop an SSD in for additional speed in your storage versus that 2 terabyte hard drive. You could definitely get some better performance out of that. You could configure higher-end graphics cards, a pair of, higher-end graphics cards instead of the 6850s that they had in there. Certainly could crank up some extra frame rate as well. So, it's all in what you decide to build in the Dell Alienware configuration utility. The case is a situation where it's kind of like you either love it or you hate it. Now, and we get a lot of readers in that just say, "Oh man, that case is just awesome." I personally like the case design. I think it looks pretty slick, and I think Alienware desktops in general look really nice. But there's some folks that just don't go for that. It's definitely striking. It's very different. The design itself, however, is excellent. I mean, you have really good venting, really good layout. Power supply at the bottom, really good just general setup and access to the components that, is indicative of, Alienware and the Dell, design approach. The other thing is this is a liquid-cooled CPU, but, we have to admit, actually, after looking at this system and running it through its paces, it really didn't have the same sort of build quality, we have to admit, that we've come to expect from Alienware. If you look at the chassis and the internals of the chassis, wiring is not quite tidy like we've seen from folks like Main Gear lately, where you look at the inside of a rig and it's so impeccably designed and configured from a cable management standpoint that you could eat off the inside of the chassis. This isn't a case. We looked at the Alienware system, the Aurora R3. And there was some work to be done to clean that up. We found a loose screw floating around when we got it. You know, maybe that happened in shipping, so we'll give them a pass on that. Then we found the ATX 24V power connector wasn't plugged into the motherboard. That's like a, hello? How could this happen? So, you know, a bit of a downer there. You know, we were pros and folks, you know, certainly enthusiasts that would buy this rig, they'd react and be able to fix that up real quick and handle it on the fly. Novice users, maybe not so much. And so we were sort of taken aback. It seems like the mass production flow of Dell maybe needs to be tightened up a little bit. All in all, a nice system for the money for sure. Great component selection, great design. Could have been a little bit better on the workmanship.
Let's move over to processors. Intel's got a Sandy Bridge E, and we actually covered this on a show I do elsewhere, and apparently it won't ship with a heatsink or any other cooling mechanism, and I heard it's not because it's magically cooler or anything. It might be because Intel might be admitting that their heat issue or heat dissipation systems may not be as good as they would like them to be. Marco, could you enlighten us on this?
Yes, and I actually don't believe a lot of the reports out there that are claiming it's because of a heat issue. I actually personally reached out to Intel, and I have off-the-record stuff I can't talk about. You know, they at this point, they were towing the company line and saying they're not going to comment on unreleased product, but they're always exploring avenues to enhance, you know, the user experience. So here's what I think the situation is. With the upcoming super high-end Sandy Bridge E chips that are coming, supposedly, if reports are true, some of the chips are maybe pulling or trying to dissipate up to 180 watts. Now, because of that, the stories floating around out there are, okay, Intel's not going to bundle their stock Sandy Bridge heatsink because it's not up to snuff. What I actually think's going to happen, Sandy Bridge E-based Xeons, for example, I think more than likely are going to include heatsink. Sandy Bridge E-based, when they eventually become more mainstream chips, are going to probably have a heatsink. Sandy Bridge E Extreme Edition processors, there's a possibility they will not include the heatsink, but I think it's more a business move on Intel's part. I don't know anybody out there that would buy a boxed $1,000 Intel processor and slap that cheapo heatsink on there. Everybody's going with a better cooler. So instead of just wasting it, I think it's going to be a business decision not to include it so that enthusiasts or system builders can use their own solution. At least that's my take. But since you guys actually already talked about it, I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Oh, we were just checking out. It was on that same day that VR Zone actually had the report, so it's just that day. I know
Gotcha.
You can't actually say anything because you had off-the-record conversations, but could you recommend, and will Hot Hardware have recommendations for heat sinks that people should think about if they're going to go with Sandy Bridge E?
Absolutely.
Usually, when at least what has been the case in the past, when I or Dave cover a new processor architecture launch, I also like to include many of the accessories and motherboards that are launching along with it. So more than likely, any of today's high-end coolers, it's either just going to need a new mounting bracket to fit, or there will be new models launched to fit Sandy Bridge E. Even if they are pushing 180 watts, any of the tall, tower-type coolers out today are going to be fine. Any of the higher-end self-contained water cooling units are going to be fine. When we actually are able to test the chips and dissect them for ourselves, I will be using more than likely more than one cooler, and yeah, we'll definitely be able to talk about recommendations at that point.
So a small company, I don't know, you guys might have heard them, they're kind of important, Hewlett-Packard. They apparently got in a little trouble. This was a small story this week that kind of exploded today. First of all, Best Buy apparently was not happy with HP because Best Buy only sold about 25,000 of the 270,000 units of touchpads they had, and they wanted HP to take it back. That's the first tiny story that people have forgotten about by this point because HP has done a bit of house cleaning. Dave, do you want to maybe touch upon the Best Buy thing and maybe explain what exactly happened with the earnings call that happened as of this recording?
Yeah, it all kind of came full circle today with the announcement from HP, but I think, the writing was on the wall. The folks at Best Buy, said hey, we're not selling these things, and you guys, you got to help us out because this is like holding an anchor, and we've got a ton of liability and a ton of stock. And I think what happens is it's twofold. I mean, there is an absolute tide that you have to fight against these days in tablets. When you look at iOS, which the iPad is undoubtedly king, selling multiples in terms of volume versus all of the Android market share on the market right now. And then you look at the Android model and the many heavyweight manufacturers that are behind Android as a tablet OS, or even as a handset OS, and you think about that critical mass all stacked against you as a manufacturer with your own proprietary OS and the marketplace model. I mean, let's face it, tablets are not about just the tablet itself, that beautiful 10-inch screen, the controls, the chips inside that are powering the experience. It's about the operating system, and then it's about the ecosystem around it, the marketplace that goes with it, the apps. I mean, Apple just defined the app and brought it to fruition, and now we're all talking about apps, and apps are critically important. And so here we are, we've got HP out on the island by themselves with WebOS and this Palm acquisition, and their own app model and their own ecosystem that they have to sustain all by themselves with everybody else, Lenovo, Toshiba, Asus, the names go on behind Android, and then Apple, the behemoth with iOS. That's a tough battle, and you got to have real good chops to fight that. And so now you walk into Best Buy and you've got all these other solutions. That tablet from HP has got to stand out like nobody's business. It's got to have some really good stuff. And it appears it just wasn't good enough. I mean, John Q. Public spoke with their buying dollars, and it didn't happen. So what happens today? We hear from HP. They're getting out of the tablet business, and they're getting out of WebOS in terms of handsets and mobile devices, and they're looking to maybe an automotive play for it.
Yeah, I'm curious for the both of you on this, for both of your answers on this one. Can the market only bear two mainstream operating systems? I mean, there's OS X, and that's minor, and there's Windows. There's Android, and then there's iOS with a bit of Windows Phone 7 in there. I mean, is two the magic number when it comes to this stuff? Can a third one actually survive each time? I mean, I know Windows Phone 7 is there in the mobile space, and that has a really small dent, but like in the tablet space, the third player was WebOS, and it still can't do it. Is two it? Like, is that all?
I'll let Marco jump in on this, but I would say that it's about critical mass. Microsoft is probably the only other one that could make a play. Go for it, buddy.
Yeah, so I still think it's so early in the current generation of tablets. They're still technically in their infancy. There is still room for another player to come in and rise to prominence and others to fade away. Let me just ask you guys a quick question, because I didn't read the entire announcement from HP. I know they're moving away from WebOS tablets, but are they moving away from tablets completely? Because I have another theory.
Well, yeah, HP, what they're doing is they're going to... They haven't explained exactly what they're going to do with basically their hardware division, and not including printers. So when it comes to desktops and laptops and tablets, like that's going to be either sold off as a whole, or its parts, or WebOS maybe sold as patents.
They were looking a spin-off,
right? Or they were talking about.
Go ahead. I just wonder if the head honchos at HP were sitting around a table thinking about how they could bolster WebOS support, when they also probably have a whole other group of people working on more than likely a Windows 8 tablet, and what kind of synergy a Windows 8 tablet's going to have with their Windows 8 based PCs, and was it worth the effort to push WebOS knowing what's coming with Windows 8? And it's strictly speculation. I don't know anything about it. I'm just thinking myself, outside looking in, how much are they willing to invest in WebOS when they know Windows 8's coming and they can have this synergy with their PCs, which is also their bread and butter. But, I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea.
I mean, arguably, I'm thinking, HP must have known that Microsoft was going to make a serious play in the tablet space. I mean, years ago, I remember Steve Ballmer showing off the HP Slate, saying this is going to run Windows. And HP and Microsoft were buddies then. And then basically, once HP bought Palm, that relationship got really messed up.
Right.
So I don't know exactly what they were thinking with WebOS and why they would kill it so early. I'm still trying to figure out what's going to happen. I mean, HP as it stands, the remaining company is going to end up doing enterprise work. Stuff like, I mean, they're trying to basically become IBM, spin off their PC division, or however that may be, maybe sell it to the highest bidder or whatever. And HP, then we never use them in our regular day-to-day. I mean, how often do we use IBM products unless we're watching Jeopardy when Watson is playing? I mean, we don't really use that stuff day-to-day, that is. I'm sure we use it a long time ago. I mean, once it trickles down to us consumers. Marco,
isn't HP still like top 3 in desktop PC
they are.
or in PC shipments?
I think you're looking at a similar situation to when IBM spun off their PC division to Lenovo, right? I mean, let's draw parallels there. That's exactly what this looks like, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Ayaz. That's what HP is doing here. They're going for big iron down the road in terms of the computing space and printers. I mean, they're a huge ink company. Let's face that too. I mean, they make more money in ink. It's like gold.
Well, wait a second. The printer division, though, is staying within the current HP. The other hardware stuff is separate.
Right. Right. So you spin off the PC division, the tablets, the notebooks, the consumer desktops, and you run with a different model than this thing called WebOS, because stemming the tide is just not happening with Android and Microsoft and Apple. Those 3 tiers, just it's hard to beat it.
Do you guys think the marketplace is the same when it came to when IBM sold off its PC division? That was a shocker at the time, but there wasn't this kind of flux that's going on in the computer, basically ecosystem. We have tablets, smartphones, laptops, desktops. Back then, when Lenovo did this, we were just seeing, the starts of smartphones, with RIM still being around and being like the top dog. But I mean, Lenovo ThinkPads were the thing. Laptops were it. There were tablet PCs, but they weren't like they are now with this modern tablet with the touchscreen interface. Do you think this is the same kind of thing, or has time made this thing fundamentally different?
I think it's
I'll take that
similar.
if you don't mind.
Go for it, Marco.
So I think that the market is very different now, and this would be this is very different than what IBM was doing with ThinkPads, because they had minimal market share for their desktops, if they were even still making them at the time they spun off the ThinkPads to Lenovo. And ThinkPads were, and still are, they remain a premier brand. HP is in a very different situation. They sell boatloads of PCs. Their notebooks, while maybe not as not as sought after in the enterprise as the ThinkPads, their ProBooks are still very widely used. My wife's company, they have bought thousands of ProBooks just last year. I think it's going to mark a fundamental change in the direction of the company. Versus, say, just spinning off, a division that maybe wasn't making as much money as they like. I have to think that HP's PC division is making money hand over fist. Maybe I'm wrong.
Dave, I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you think?
I think it's very similar to what IBM experienced, and the downward pressure and profit margins and the ability to differentiate. I think it's a little bit sad, to be honest, because we're talking about another U.S. based big name manufacturer. I mean, who's left now? Dell, right? That is leaving the PC space and spinning off, and there's probably going to be an Asian entity that will exist. I think it's difficult to run a business these days, and I wonder sort of the big picture behind it. To drive that kind of volume and that kind of competitive model in a U.S. Cost model and U.S. economy. That's a whole nother discussion, but it bothers me a little bit in that regard. And I think, it'll be very interesting to see. I think what's different about back then, and what Marco touched on, is that the whole marketplace is changing so rapidly to ultra mobility and different technologies and operating systems and openness and all this other stuff that's affecting the model. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all shakes out. But we'll be there to try and help you sort through it. I'll tell you that much.
Well, hopefully, I'm going to see some really cheap touchpads at Best Buy for like $99, and I'm buying tablets for every room in the house because the browser's pretty good. But, you know, if you want to get something for nothing, I know that Hot Hardware does contests. Marco, can you drop any contest hints? Maybe let the viewers know first. Are you working on a contest? Because you guys are always working on a contest. Let's be serious here. But
yes.
Can you drop the hints?
So I can drop more than a few hints. Last podcast we weren't quite ready with details. I'm not 100% there. Dave and I are still kind of working a few OEMs. What I can say is the next contest is going to start very soon, hopefully in the next few days. It will be a Sandy Bridge quad-core based system. It will have a case and power supply from NZXT, very cool stuff. It will have an SSD and RAM from Patriot. And the few other parts we're still trying to pull together, but we guarantee it's going to be hot. Stay tuned to Hot Hardware for the details.
Now, will you provide a heatsink?
I don't. You know what? Just for the sake of keeping this podcast current, I think we're not going to include one this time.
So it'll run hot.
Fry an egg on that thing.
There you go. They put the hot in Hot Hardware when they don't put a heatsink, or hopefully the liquid cool if there's no heatsink. Anyway, if you'd like to, actually, if you want to know more about the stories we talked about, check out HotHardware.com. But if you're like, you know what, blue really isn't my color. I want to go around the web. I want to look at other blues, maybe like at Facebook.com, because they use blue. You guys should check out Hot Hardware, Facebook.com/HotHardware. Dig also uses blue at dig.com/HotHardware. You could also check out, I don't know, Twitter. They also use blue. Wait a second. There's a lot of blue out there. Twitter.com/HotHardware. And no blue on YouTube. YouTube.com/HotHardwareVids for all your moving picture goodness for reviews in video format, which I quite enjoy because I think reading is hard. So...
And just quickly, I just want to say, we were around before all those other sites. You copied the blue from us.
That's right, and you guys have the blue gradient, so clearly you covered the entire spectrum of blue. So other companies,
there you go.
Beware of Hot Hardware. That rhymed, and I didn't mean to do that again.
I'm going to sue somebody.
Let's sue nobody. Let's just thank everybody for stopping by. We'll see everybody next week.
I like that.